Welcome to Hidden Twist Tales. Please support this journey. Your one click means the world to me. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you so much. Maria never thought one ordinary evening could change the rhythm of her entire life. She had just set the table for dinner when her husband, Daniel, mentioned casually, "By the way, an old friend of mine is coming over tonight. You'll like him, Maria. His name's Adrian." The name meant nothing to her, but the tone in Daniel's voice carried a warmth she hadn't heard in a while. It had been months since he had spoken with that much energy. Marriage had turned into a quiet routine, meals bills, and tired nights. Maria smoothed her dress nervously, wondering why she suddenly cared so much about making a good impression. Maybe it was just the silence she'd been living in, craving a little spark of newness. When the doorbell rang, Daniel's face lit up. He opened the door, and there he was, Adrian. Tall, with sharp but kind eyes, and a smile that seemed to hold both confidence and gentleness. His presence filled the room. The moment he stepped inside, he hugged Daniel like a brother, their laughter echoing through the hallway. Maria extended her hand politely, but Adrian surprised her by taking it warmly, holding it just a little longer than necessary. "So this is the famous Maria," he said with a voice deep and calm. "Daniel has spoken about you for years." Something in his tone made her cheeks warm. She told herself it was just charm, nothing more. Dinner began with stories of their college days. Maria watched Daniel laugh, in ways he hadn't in months, and she couldn't help but notice how Adrian kept glancing at her between the jokes. Not in a disrespectful way, but in a searching, curious way, as if he was trying to read her heart. The evening stretched on. After dessert, Daniel's phone buzzed. He excused himself to take a work call in the other room, leaving Maria and Adrian alone in the dim light of the dining room. Silence lingered at first, broken only by the ticking clock. Adrian leaned back, his gaze steady on her. "You know," he said quietly, "Daniel is lucky. You have the kind of presence that makes a home feel alive." Maria's breath caught. Compliments weren't something she heard often these days. She tried to laugh it off. "Oh, I'm just doing what any wife would do." But Adrian shook his head slowly. "No, not everyone could carry warmth the way you do. I noticed it the moment I walked in." Her heart raced, though she couldn't understand why. She wanted to change the subject, but her voice betrayed her, soft and low. "You notice too much for someone who just arrived." His eyes didn't waver. "Maybe. Or maybe I notice because I've spent too many years searching for something I never found. And then tonight, I walked in here." Maria froze. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that left her unsettled. She knew what he meant, and it scared her how much it stirred inside her. Before she could answer, Daniel returned, cheerful and unaware, clapping Adrian on the shoulder. "I'm glad you came tonight, brother. It feels like old times again." Maria forced a smile, hiding the storm inside her chest. But as Adrian prepared to leave, he caught her eyes one last time, holding the gaze just a moment longer than he should have. It was enough for Maria to feel something shift, something she couldn't ignore. When the door closed behind him, her heart was still racing. She leaned against the wall, unsure if it was wrongness or longing she felt, and in the quiet, Maria whispered to herself, "Why did it feel like he had seen straight through me?" Maria leaned against the wall, her heart still racing. Why did it feel like he had seen straight through me? She tried to shake the thought away, reminding herself that Adrian was Daniel's friend, nothing more. But the quiet of the house only made his words echo louder in her mind. That night, as she slipped into bed beside Daniel, she expected to feel comfort. Instead, the distance between them felt wider than ever. Daniel was scrolling on his phone, half listening to her when she spoke. Adrian's earlier gaze, steady and searching, replayed in her memory until she closed her eyes and forced herself to sleep. Days passed, but the feeling didn't fade. If anything, it grew. At random moments while cooking, while folding laundry, found herself hearing Adrian's voice. "You have the kind of presence that makes a home feel alive." She hated herself for it, yet she couldn't stop. A week later, Daniel announced, "Adrian's coming over again. We're watching the game tonight." Maria's stomach tightened. She wanted to say no, to find an excuse, but the words never left her lips. Instead, she just nodded, her heart thudding with an anticipation she couldn't admit. When Adrian arrived, he was as warm and charismatic as before. Daniel was thrilled, pulling him toward the living room. They laughed, reminisced, drank. Maria kept herself busy in the kitchen, but every time Adrian's laughter rang out, she felt drawn to it. like a secret melody only she could hear. Later, in the evening, Daniel grew tired and stretched out on the couch, eyes heavy. "You to keep talking," he mumbled. Within minutes, he was asleep. Maria froze. The same silence as before stretched between her and Adrian, charged, unspoken. She carried a tray of tea into the room, careful not to meet his eyes. But when she placed a cup in front of him, his hand brushed hers. This time, he didn't pull away. Neither did she. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, and she whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that." Adrian's voice was low, almost pleading. "Then tell me not to come here again." Maria swallowed hard, words caught in her throat. She should say it. She should stop whatever this was, before it began. But instead, she sank into the chair opposite him, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what I want." The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on hers. "Maria, I don't want to hurt Daniel. He's my friend, but I can't deny what I feel when I see you." Her heart ached with confusion. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not with such honesty, not with such intensity. "I'm married," she whispered, as though reminding herself. "And I respect that," Adrian replied. "But feelings don't disappear just because they're inconvenient." The truth in his words struck her. She wanted to be angry at him, at herself, at this entire situation. Yet beneath the guilt was something more dangerous, a longing she couldn't silence. Daniel stirred slightly on the couch. Shifting in his sleep, Maria's breath caught, panic flooding her. She looked back at Adrian, eyes wide, silently begging him not to say more. He nodded, reading her without a word, but his gaze lingered, heavy with everything left unsaid. Maria sat there, her hands trembling in her lap, torn between loyalty and a wild, unexpected yearning that terrified her. And just then, Daniel mumbled drowsily, "You too, okay?" His voice was thick with sleep, his eyes still closed. Maria froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. "You too, okay?" Daniel mumbled, eyes still half closed, his voice thick with sleep. Maria's heart stopped. She forced a quick smile, though he couldn't see it. "Yes, we're fine," she answered softly, her voice steadier than she felt. Daniel shifted on the couch, muttered something about the score of the game, and drifted back into his doze. The silence that followed was unbearable. Maria could feel Adrian's eyes on her, but she dared not meet them. She picked up her teacup, hands trembling, and sipped just to give herself something to do. Adrian leaned forward, his voice low. "Maria, you don't have to say anything now. I want you to know that what I feel isn't passing. It won't fade after tonight." She set the cup down too quickly, nearly spilling it. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't say these things. You'll only make it harder." His gaze softened, but his words carried weight. "Has Daniel even noticed? The way you carry so much alone. The way you smile to cover what you're missing." Maria looked away, blinking fast. She hated how much his words touched the hidden corners of her heart. It felt like Adrian was voicing thoughts she had buried for years. She stood abruptly, needing space. "I should clear the dishes." But as she turned, Adrian rose to. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his presence but not his touch. His voice was barely a whisper. "You deserve more than to be invisible." Maria's breath caught. She wanted to move away, but her feet wouldn't listen. Her body betrayed her heart, leaning ever so slightly toward him. Then Daniel stirred. Again, sitting up this time. "What are you two whispering about?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Maria jumped back, her cheeks flushed. "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just the dishes." Adrian calmly smiled, his composure intact. "I was just thanking her for the tea." Daniel yawned, stretching. "Good, because if I know Maria, she's probably fussing about something. She doesn't need to." He chuckled, oblivious. Maria forced a laugh, though inside she was unraveling. Later that night, after Adrian left and Daniel went straight to bed, Maria lingered in the kitchen. She gripped the edge of the counter, her mind spinning. She knew she was standing at the edge of something dangerous, something that could burn everything she had. And yet, her heart whispered with reckless honesty, "It's the first time in years someone has truly seen me." The days that followed were heavy. Maria tried to bury herself in chores, in her usual routines. But nothing silenced the memory of Adrian's eyes or the truth in his voice. She avoided asking Daniel about him, but fate was not kind. On Friday evening, Daniel walked in cheerfully. "Guess what? Adrian invited us over for dinner at his place tomorrow, he insisted. Said he wants us both there. Maria's stomach flipped. She nodded quickly, hiding her panic. That night she couldn't sleep. She turned in bed, listening to Daniel's steady breathing, while her mind filled with questions. Would Adrian push things further? Could she handle being so close to him again? Or worse, could she resist? The next evening, Maria dressed carefully without even meaning to. A soft dress, her hair loosely tied back. She told herself it was just politeness. But when Daniel complimented her, "You look nice tonight," she felt guilty. When they arrived at Adrian's apartment, Maria's heart was already pounding. Adrian opened the door, smiling warmly. His home was simple but welcoming, filled with books, paintings, and the faint scent of cedar. As Daniel stepped inside, Adrian's eyes flicked briefly to Maria. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to tell her that whatever was between them hadn't faded, and Maria realized, with a trembling heart, that she was walking straight into the fire. Adrian's apartment was warm and inviting. The kind of space that carried his personality in every corner. A shelf lined with old novels, paintings that seemed chosen with care, and a soft lamp casting golden light across the room. Maria stepped inside slowly, her chest tight. She told herself to focus on Daniel, to keep her smile natural. But she couldn't help noticing the way Adrian's eyes lingered just a heartbeat too long when he greeted her. "Dinner smells incredible," Daniel said cheerfully, heading straight toward the dining table. "You didn't have to go all out, brother." Adrian shrugged lightly. "For old friends, it's never too much." His gaze flicked to Maria again, softer this time. "Besides, I enjoy cooking for company that matters." Maria's breath caught. She quickly busied herself with setting napkins, pretending not to notice. Dinner began easily enough. Laughter. Stories from the past, Daniel filling the air with his booming voice. But as the meal went on, Maria became aware of the quiet undercurrents. Every so often, when Daniel looked away, Adrian's eyes found hers. No words, just a glance charged, unspoken, dangerous. Halfway through the evening, Daniel's phone rang. Work again. He excused himself with an apologetic smile. "You two carry on. I'll just take this in the other room." Maria's pulse jumped. She prayed the call would be quick. But Daniel's voice soon drifted faintly down the hallway, deep in conversation. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it. "You look beautiful tonight." Maria's fork froze midway to her plate. She lowered it slowly, forcing a small laugh. "Adrian, don't." "I can't help it," he said softly. "Every time I see you, it's harder to pretend." Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She shook her head, whispering, "This is wrong. He trusts you. He trusts me." Adrian's jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't waver. "And I respect him, but what am I supposed to do, Maria? Act like I don't feel what I feel? Pretend you don't feel it too?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Because the truth was, she did feel it. The pull, the spark, the ache of being seen after so long. "Please," she whispered, "don't say it out loud." But Adrian leaned forward slightly, his voice low, steady, and certain. "You deserve to be loved in a way that sets your soul on fire. Tell me I'm wrong, Maria. Look me in the eye and tell me you haven't thought about me since that night." Maria's chest rose and fell too quickly. She gripped the edge of her chair, torn between fear and longing. She wanted to deny it, to protect the life she had built, but her silence betrayed her. Adrian's hand moved slowly across the table, stopping just inches from hers. He didn't touch her, he didn't have to. The space between their hands burned with tension. "Say the word," he murmured, "and I'll never come here again. I'll walk away for good." "But if you don't," Maria's throat tightened. Her eyes stung with tears. She opened her mouth, desperate to speak, and just then, Daniel's voice called from the hallway, cheerful and unaware. "Maria, you have to hear this. My boss just said the funniest thing." Maria snatched her hand back, her heart slamming against her ribs. Adrian sat back quickly, his expression calm, though his eyes told another story. By the time Daniel returned, Maria was smiling faintly, pretending nothing had shifted, but inside, she knew everything had. Because Adrian was right. She had thought about him. Too much. And the worst part was, she wasn't sure she wanted it to stop. Daniel returned to the table with a wide grin, laughing about something his boss had said. He didn't notice how Maria's cheeks were flushed or how Adrian's jaw was set too tightly. Maria forced herself to smile, nodding at Daniel's story, but she could feel Adrian's presence like a shadow beside her. Come on the outside, storming on the inside. After dinner, Daniel insisted they all move to the living room for coffee. He was in high spirits, talking about old memories, the way they used to sneak out of the dorms, the stupid fights they had, the girls they had chased. Maria sat quietly, laughing when it was expected, but her eyes kept drifting toward Adrian, and every time their gazes locked, her chest tightened. It wasn't just attraction, it was the way he saw her, even in a crowded room. She wasn't invisible. To him, that realization scared her more than anything. Eventually, the evening wound down. Daniel stretched, yawning. I think I've had enough coffee for a year, he joked. We should get going. Adrian walked them to the door. When Daniel stepped outside first, Maria lingered for just a second. Adrian's voice dropped low. Don't let this be the last time. Her breath hitched. She whispered, Adrian, but Daniel turned back just then, calling her name. She hurried out, her heart in chaos. That night, lying in bed beside her husband, Maria stared at the ceiling. Adrian's words, his gaze, his nearness, they replayed endlessly. She turned on her side, looking at Daniel. He was already asleep, peaceful, unaware. She loved him. She knew she did. But was it the same love as before? Or had it changed into something quieter? Something more like habit than fire? Her chest ached with guilt. She closed her eyes, but all she saw was Adrian. The following week, fate delivered what Maria feared most. Daniel came home one evening and said casually, Adrian asked me to help him with something tomorrow, moving some boxes. I told him we'd both come. You don't mind, do you? Maria's stomach dropped. She wanted to say no, to invent an excuse, but the words stuck. She simply nodded, her smile brittle. The next day, they went to Adrian's apartment again. Daniel busied himself with the heavy lifting, carrying boxes from one room to another. Maria ended up in the kitchen, helping Adrian sort through old books. The air between them was thick, charged with everything unspoken. Every brush of his hand against hers made her heart race. At one point, when Daniel's footsteps faded into the other room, Adrian leaned closer. I can't keep doing this, he whispered. Maria froze, clutching a book to her chest. Adrian, don't, I mean it, he pressed. His voice was rough with emotion. Seeing you, wanting you, and pretending it's nothing I can't. Tell me to walk away, Maria, and I will. But if you don't, she looked up at him, her eyes glassy. Her lips trembled, but no words came, because deep down, she knew the truth. She didn't want him to walk away, and Adrian saw it. Slowly, carefully, he reached out, his hand brushing against hers. This time, she didn't pull back. The book slipped from her fingers, landing softly on the counter. For one suspended moment, they stood there, hearts pounding, faces inches apart. Then Daniel's voice boomed from the hallway. Maria, where are you? She jerked back, her breath shallow, guilt flooding her chest. Adrian's hand fell to his side, but his eyes held hers firmly, promising silently that this wasn't over. And Maria knew with terrifying certainty he was right. Maria, where are you? Daniel's voice echoed from the hallway. Maria's heart pounded as she stepped back quickly, her hand still tingling where Adrian had brushed it. She bent down to pick up the book she'd dropped, using the motion to steady herself. By the time Daniel entered the kitchen, she was smiling faintly, pretending to be busy. Here, she said, holding up the book. Just helping Adrian sort these. Daniel grinned, oblivious. You two are saints. I'd be lost without you. He turned to Adrian, clapping his shoulder. You really lucked out, having Maria help tonight. Adrian forced a smile, but his eyes never left Maria's. She could feel the weight of that gaze even as she turned away. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Daniel talked, laughed, carried boxes. Maria moved through it all, like a shadow, her thoughts tangled, her chest aching. When it was finally time to leave, Adrian walked them to the door again. This time, as Daniel stepped outside first, Maria lingered half a step behind. Adrian's voice was low, urgent. Maria, you can't keep pretending. Not to me, not to yourself. Her breath caught, her throat tightening. Please, Adrian, don't make me choose. But he shook his head. You've already chosen. Every time you look at me and don't turn away, you've chosen. Daniel called from the car, breaking the moment. Maria hurried after her husband, her heart racing. That night, sleep refused to come. Maria lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Adrian's words echoing in her mind. You've already chosen. She turned to look at Daniel. He was sound asleep, his face peaceful. For years, he had been her partner, her safe place. But lately, he felt more like routine than love. She hated herself for thinking it, but the thought wouldn't leave. And then, like a flood, memories of Adrian's eyes, his voice, his nearness, swept through her. It wasn't just attraction, it was the way he made her feel seen, alive, wanted. Feelings she hadn't felt in so long. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she realized the truth. She was standing at a crossroads. One path led to loyalty, safety, and a marriage that was fading. The other led to passion, danger, and the unknown. The next morning, Maria found herself standing by the window, sunlight pouring in. Daniel was already gone for work. The house felt empty, yet her heart was louder than ever. Her phone buzzed. A message. It was from Adrian. "I'll wait for you tonight. No more hiding." Maria's hands shook as she read the words. She pressed the phone to her chest, her breath trembling. She knew what walking out that door would mean. She knew what staying would cost her. Either way, her life would never be the same again. And as the clock ticked softly in the quiet house, Maria whispered to herself, voice breaking, "What do I do with a heart that belongs in two places at once?"